we are about to get started, just waiting on our live stream.
There's a seat up here too, if someone.
Oh, there's one more seat up here, right in front, prime real estate. Let's see. Okay.
Sure.
Okay, welcome everyone to Rumipalooza, trolling for Dick in Argentina. My name is Greg Newton. I am the co-founder, along with my partner Donnie Jokum, of the Bureau of General Services Queer Division. And the Bureau is an all-volunteer independent queer bookstore that we founded in 2012 and that has been here at the LGBT Center since 2014. Tonight we are being assisted by our volunteer Delaney. Please give it up for them. And as an all-volunteer independent queer bookstore, we rely on both sales and donations to keep this project going. So I'm going to pass a bag around. If you're able to make a donation, we appreciate it. There's some change in the bag for larger bills. There's also a QR code for Venmo if you'd like to donate that way. And just make sure this makes its way back to Delaney. Okay. If you are not already on our email list and you would like to be, you can sign up for that at the back of the room, and you'll get an email every other Monday about our upcoming events. You can also sign up for this on our website, which is bgsqd.com. And we have regular business hours Wednesdays through Sundays from 1 to 7 p.m. And then we often stay open later when we have events such as this. Hey, Richard, welcome. So let me just give a land acknowledgement, and then I'm going to turn things over to August for Nadiku, and we're going to get started. So the Bureau acknowledges that our organization operates on the unceded land of the Munsee Lenape. We strongly encourage you to join the Bureau in signing up to make a monthly donation to the American Indian Community House. The American Indian Community House has been located here in Manhattan since 1969, and signing up to make a monthly donation is one way for settlers and non-native people to acknowledge the legacy of theft and genocide that comprise the history of New York City and the United States. And you can find out more at aich.org. The Bureau also recognizes Palestinian liberation as a fundamental part of our collective queer liberation. And we strongly encourage you to take one of our free zines that are by the register that speak about why we feel it is especially important for queer people to speak out in solidarity with Palestinians. And with that, I turn the mic over to August, who has brought us this lovely program tonight. So please give a warm welcome to August.
Well, thank you everyone for coming. We are here today to celebrate Rumi Misibu, who was a member of the hippie drag performance troupe, the Cockettes, in the late 60s and early 70s in San Francisco. They were the first bearded drag queens to receive national press, and the term genderfuck was coined about them. After the Cockettes, Rumi starred in a movie called Elevator Girls in Bondage, and he performed with the Angels of Light, which were the Cockette spin-off group that were all about free theater. He launched a comeback in the mid-2000s after he reclaimed his identity. For nearly 40 years, Rumi didn't have a driver's license or social security number or any form of valid ID. He just had a library card that said Rumi Misibu. I met Rumi when I was 18 years old. I was trying to find someone named Bambi Lake, and I found Rumi. He was the archivist of the Cockettes and one of their main spokespeople. I recorded over 215 conversations with Rumi, and the book we'll be reading from tonight contains 3 of those recordings. Rumi's story is one about determination and perseverance. He never stopped going. Towards the end of his life, he was extremely disabled. He couldn't walk for years, but he was always planning his next play. There's a few things I want to say in memorial to Rumi that just make me chuckle before we get started. The first is he only called me his biographer. No matter who he was talking to, and 9 times out of 10 they knew my name, he only called me his biographer. Another funny story is when we'd be talking on the phone and maybe a nurse would interrupt or a visitor would come by, he'd always tell them, "Sorry, honey, I can't talk right now, I'm on the phone with New York." And lastly, I stole the name Rumipalooza from an event Rumi did. He did a few Rumipaloozas, but I went to one in 2013 with my friend Gabby, who will be reading, and the lady who was sat next to us was there because she thought the event was for Rumi, the Sufi poet. So hopefully there's some confused people here as well. So we're going to start off with the previous book, Off the Grid, and reading first will be Perry Brass. Now, Perry Brass was a member of the pioneering gay activist group founded in the aftermath of the June 28, 1969 Stonewall Rebellion, the Gay Liberation Front. He went on to co-found the first gay men's health clinic on the East Coast. He's published over 20 books. He's currently the president of the Gay Liberation Front Foundation. And he just followed in my footsteps by winning the Charles Shively Award for Gay Liberation. Here is Perry.
That was a wonderful introduction. I couldn't have done that better myself. I don't know if I should be reading this or acting it out, but I'll try reading it. Man on the Run. Okay, thank you. I attended Los Angeles City College with Cindy Williams from Laverne and Shirley. It was 1967 and I was 20 years old. We'd been drama students at the same high school. The actress Sally Field also studied with us. Sally got discovered and put in films right away, but Cindy had to work straight jobs. She was a waitress at the House of Pancakes for a while. Really. The two of us lived together in the Beverly Hills and she was supporting me. I was taking lots of LSD, smoking lots of reefer, and wasn't able to keep a job. My last job under my real name, James Bartlett, was temping at Bank of America and Security First National Bank in downtown Los Angeles. I started thinking, I am not meeting my potential in Hollywood. It was so competitive. Had I stayed, I probably would have had all my teeth capped, face planed, hair dyed, and gone the Hollywood route. But I saw something else in my future after I stumbled down to Hollywood Boulevard and saw this movie called She Freaks. I was on LSD and it blew me away. The movie is about a sleazy older man on his way to town promoting the circus. Hey girl, you want a job? She gets in the car with him and they go to town to promote the circus. Right away, the lion tamer and the circus owner's son start lusting after her. They fight and end up killing each other. Then the owner takes a liking to her and asks her to marry him, but he dies on their wedding night. He has a heart attack and dies on top of her. It happens. Leaving her to be the circus owner. She says, as the first order of business, I'm getting rid of the freaks. This is their livelihood, so they come at her, cut off both her arms and legs, and throw her into a pit of snakes as she becomes a star attraction. After seeing the movie, I returned to the little cottage behind Grauman's Chinese Theater where I lived and left Cindy a short note. I said, Cindy, I can't take it anymore. I got on a Greyhound bus with the addresses of 3 girls I knew in Los Angeles and went straight to Berkeley. Winter was coming and I figured one of those girls would take me in. The first girl was a girl I had a big crush on in high school. She was so smart. She was a year ahead of me and was studying at the University of California, Berkeley. I couldn't find her. The second girl was a girl I'd also gone to high school with. She wasn't around either. In fact, she was working in England as Samuel Beckett's secretary. Wow. The third girl was a loose married woman called Sandra Magic Dyke Rubenstein. I looked her up and found her living in West Berkeley. I knocked on the door. She answered in a cold sweat and said I couldn't stay with her because the FBI was watching her house and she was living with the Black Panthers. She told me, you know what? I have a friend named Carol Graham, who's a lesbian poet. She lives in a water tower on San Pablo Avenue. You might go down there and she might take you in. I went to her and I knocked on the side of the water tower and she said, come on up. The water tower was in the back of a hippie store where everything was free. Canned food, blankets, clothing, whatever you wanted. This biker gang called the Gypsy Joker ran the store. All we had room for in the water tower were our bedrolls and a work table made out of a door. We did hippie crafts and I made copper jewelry. I decorated and shellacked pine boxes and put them on consignment in stores. That's how I lived until I started selling kilos of weed. We'd buy a kilo, smoke half, and sell the other half for rent. It's called basic living, I guess. God knows how I managed all those years, but I did. I turned on, I tuned in, and I dropped out. I took Timothy Leary's mantra for what it was worth. Most other people who turned on, tuned in, and dropped out eventually dropped back in, but I stayed out. I preferred to stay out as a way to express my anarchistic feelings about my career and what I wanted to do. I never did drop back in until the intervention 16 years ago. We'll get to that later. The water tower is a setup for my life story. I was trying to make a living any way I could. I sold the Berkeley Bar magazine on the corner. We used to buy a bunch of them from the publisher Max Scheer, and we'd make 5 cents for every one we sold. I made arts and crafts and all that hippy-dippy stuff and just started living the life of a hippie. At that point, I became a draft dodger and draft resistor as well. My family moved from Hollywood to Idaho when I was 16. I kind of had an abusive childhood. I felt my parents were prejudiced. That was one of the early reasons I went off the grid. I didn't want my family's prejudice or their abuse to be part of my adulthood. I wanted to live my own life. After separating from my family, I did not see them for 52 years. I finally reunited with them in 2018, and I'm so happy I did. I also went off the grid because I didn't want to go the Hollywood route. I saw what that did to people and how fleeting stardom was. She did. I felt some peace and tranquility in coming to Berkeley and becoming spiritually evolved. In those years, from 1967 to 1969, I became spiritually involved, not with just one religion, organization, or culture, with everything. I learned tarot cards, and I graduated to the Egyptian deck. I read the I Ching, and I chanted Hare Krishna and Nabu Myoho. I read the spiritual teachings of Meher Baba and Gurdjieff. I absorbed as much as I could. When I saw the avatar Krishnamurti in person, he glowed gold. I just put out all of that on myself. I wanted to learn everything that I thought was necessary for my evolution. I took all of that into my adulthood.
And next we have Jane Held.
Thanks. We are now in 1968. All of the Cockettes met in different places. We were a bunch of freaks that came together like magnets. We met in places like the Capri, at Gay Bar, and in Golden Gate Park. North Beach and Polk Street were the gay neighborhoods in San Francisco then. We also met at the Palace Theater, which eventually became the Cockettes' home. But before that, we would go to the midnight movies at the Nocturnal Dream Show that Stephen Arnold and Sebastian were running. We would see the most fantastic movies that no one else was showing at midnight. We were exposed to people like Kenneth Anger and John Waters. They brought John Waters out with Divine. The Palace Theater was one of the first places to show John Waters' movie like Mondo Trasho and Pink Flamingos. You could have sex and smoke weed on the balcony. It was just total anarchy and freedom. The charisma of our founder, Hibiscus, ultimately brought the Cockettes together. He had a background in New York show business. Let's put on a show. That was the idea. Hibiscus would develop a theme for their early shows every month. no script, just really unstructured. He'd come up with a theme like an all-Southern show called Gone with the Showboat to Oklahoma, with shows from movies and assigned roles to all of us. Hibiscus liked to have 7 or 8 numbers and have the biggest headdress. The rest of us would just have a number or 2. It was real anarchy. And it was untraditional theater because we would bring people right from the audience into our show. People would be in the front 2 rows and suddenly they would join us to do a saber dance on stage. They were a coquette forevermore. It was so loose and practically illegal, but they were never arrested or busted for nudity. There was a lot of nudity in that group. A lot of people don't know about the nudity. They just know about the drag. A lot of people also think that the coquettes were all guys. No, the coquettes were a collective of gay men, women, and even a baby.
So now we're going to have Gabby Domingo, who I met Rumi with. I was too scared to meet him by myself, so I brought my friend Gabby with me, and she also went to Rumipalooza.
Dear God, I had my own copy. Everyone. Okay. You were on the cover of Rolling Stone? No, I said Ike and Tina Turner were. Oh, I thought you meant you as Tina Turner. No, I was going to be actually. Okay, what happened? Another time I was going to be. I got bumped for Ike and Tina Turner. That's right. I got bumped for Ike and Tina. I was going to be on the cover of Rolling Stone. That picture of me smoking the pipe with a clown, and they ended up selling subscriptions on a 1/4-page ad in the Rolling Stone with that photo. They said it was going to be the cover of the Rolling Stone, Robert Altman, the photographer. Instead, they reduced it to a 1/4 page and ended up using that photo selling subscriptions, saying, "Hey kid, turn your granny onto your subscription to Rolling Stone." I got a scan of that ad and I was furious, of course. I was bummed for Ike and Tina Turner that month. Do you remember where you were when you found out you weren't on the cover? No, I don't. I don't remember where I was. No, I don't remember. All I do remember is that I was mad, and it wasn't the photographer's fault. He was just on assignment. The photographer is still my friend, Robert Altman. He always name drops. He never, he's still my friend. He was just on assignment for Rolling Stone. He didn't know, but I got bummed. Did you talk to Jan Wenner, the publisher? I told you that, yes. Didn't I tell you that story? No. Oh, I thought I told you that whole story. I'm ready. Okay, do you want to go there? All right, Robert took a picture of me smoking a pipe, and then they said it would be on the cover of Rolling Stone. That month, Ike and Tina came out on the cover for that week. It was a weekly then. Ike and Tina are a month and a half ago, or every 2 weeks. I don't know what it was. They were still in San Francisco. They lived in New York, and Jan Wenner was still, yes, the publisher. What happened? I wasn't really mad at Robert, but someone called me up and immediately said, "Did you see Rolling Stone? You should go buy it and look at page 13. And there I was, selling subscription. I said, how dare they? I hadn't even signed a release with Robert. I would have, but he never asked me for it. We were friends. I said, oh God, everyone tells me you can sue them. I said, better yet, I have a better plan. So I was about to do Ike and Tina for my farewell concert at the Committee Theater on Broadway in North Beach before I went to New York, before moving to New York. I thought, what a great way to get publicity. I had a picture of me as Tina. I took my favorite one by David Wise, and I had somebody, probably David Wise, make a 1/4 page ad, the same size as their ad that they ran in Rolling Stone, without my permission, selling their papers. I made a 1/4 page ad advertising my show at the committee. Unannounced, with no appointment again, on a summer day in drag, wearing women's culottes with a big floppy straw hat, I went down to Rolling Stone's headquarters on Brannan Street, south of Market, without an appointment, walked into their office and asked to speak to Jan Wenner. No, Jan's not in today. I said, then I'll wait here, call him and tell him he better get his ass down here. I had no appointment, but I was livid. I had the Rolling Stone with me, and I also had the markup of the 1/4 page ad of my event coming up. Jan Wenner was actually there, and I waited a long while, and they kept making excuses. I said, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying here until I talk to him. You can talk to so-and-so. No, I'd like to talk to the publisher. Everyone said I could sue. I even told them that. I said, I've been advised by my attorneys. I really don't want to need to bring them in. I think Jan and I could just figure this out, could settle it ourselves. Finally, he came out and he asked me what was the problem. He invited me to his office and I sat down and I said, here's what happened. I said, Robert took this picture. He promised it would be on the cover. I was bummed for Argentina. That's okay, blah, blah, blah. She's a friend of mine. Robert's a friend of mine, no problem there. The problem is that you used my photo without telling me, without getting a signed release. You're implying I want to sell your product, endorse your product, and implied that one, I was doing drugs because you say in the caption, turn your granny on to a year's subscription, and I'm smoking a pipe. A clown is holding a pipe up to my lips and it does say, turn your granny on to a year's subscription or something like that, implying that I'm old. I said, I'm 22 years old. This is ageist. You're implying that I'm old and you're also implying that I do drugs. How do you know what was in that pipe, if anything? I said, I really need some retraction or compensation here. I'm not really looking for money, but I am looking for justice. I pop on the table my quarter-page ad. I said, in 2 weeks' time, I'm about to play Tina Turner at the Committee Theater on Broadway. Look, here is a camera-ready quarter-page ad of my show. I want you to run this free of charge in your paper next week. And they did. They didn't exactly run the whole ad. They cut my image out and they put me in a collage in the what's happening in San Francisco that week. It was cool because Donovan was in town and Donovan was doing a show. Groucho Marx was doing a show at Masonic Auditorium and Cajun fiddler Doug Kershaw was also in town. They made a little collage of all of us, a 2.5-page ad of what was happening in San Francisco. And a little right after that, I was playing at the committee. So that was okay. Now I don't have that. I never have found a copy of that. It was like a little insert, actually. It was an insert. It was an insert. But after all, you're never going to find that insert. This is great.
Now we have Huckleberry, who has been an activist for over 30 years. He helped organize the first 2 Reclaim Pride marches, and he's one of the main people that makes the drag march happen every year. Like this.
Hello. Gosh. I hope I'm reading the right one. I didn't really think through the gum.
Here, put it in Mike's mouth.
I could put it right here, right? All right, this will be August. You mentioned that in your dream world, you mentioned you lived in your dream world. Did it ever bite you in the, oh, that's the wrong page. I've read by 1970, the hate had become dangerous and the hippie dream was dead. I would say absolutely, I agree. I got to San Francisco from the East Bay. I lived in the Haight in 1970, I would say 1970. And I lived in the Haight off and on in 71. And it was dangerous. I got busted into my own house for a lid of marijuana when Rexy and Clay both, I mean Aaron and Rexy, both minors, when they chased junkies into my house right off Haight Street. Speed had replaced psychedelics. They had an actual exorcism in the Haight in '68 called Death of the Hippie. A very famous event called Death of the Hippie, where they actually brought a coffin down Haight Street. It was over. By '68, the summer of love was over and it became the summer of hate. After Altamont, remember Altamont? Events became very dangerous. The hate, yes, did become dangerous because it was replaced by bad drugs, by heroin, by speed freaks in the lower Haight. Drugs were being replaced by speed instead of psychedelia, and they made people go nuts. It did become very dangerous because a friend of mine took his life, jumped off a building one night, my boyfriend's in the Haight, and I got busted there. It was a very dangerous place to be, very, very dangerous in the early 70s. Again, that's also the time, 70, 71. I'm living in my own fantasy land by then. Pre-70, it's already dangerous. By 70, I'm back in the Hague, living there. I'm a coquette, and their commune was on Divisadero. Did I say it right? Yeah. By then, we were so into our own fantasy. We're not really thinking about danger, any of that. We're not even letting that be a part of our life. Hallelujah. We're not letting anybody in. We're not fearing. We're not scared. We're just out there. We're practically illegal. Also, the bikers were taking over the Hague. The bikers and the Hells Angels. It was very, very rough. Very, very rough scene in the Hague. It just changed completely. Just completely changed. And a lot of the hippies just gave up and went home to wherever they came from or ran away from. The dream was over, and it was an exodus, the death of the hippies. So in 1969 even, it's already dangerous. Then by that time, I'm here in 68, 69, I saw a lot of that. Then by 70, I'm still here in 71, I've isolated myself. By that time, I'm just isolating myself from all of that. I'm not aware of it because I'm so out of it. And I'm not really letting that be a part of my life. I'm living in my own dream world and with the coquettes. August asks, you mentioned you lived in your dream world. Did that ever bite you in the butt? Did you ever get caught off guard by someone because you were just, no, only when I knew it was over. Only when I knew it isn't working. This is over. I'm not going to go on forever. It's not going to go on forever. We thought it was going to go, I say that over and over again, until we sold everything. We all thought it was going to be forever, but it wasn't. Little did we know it would be over 2.5 short-lived years, the whole thing. Do you want to keep going?
Yeah.
Did you have any idea, New Jane, let's just jump to this. Oh, he asked if there was any danger or the mentality of the change, if anyone got roughed up. Oh, no, none of us did. We almost had this little halo around us. No one got beat up going from place to place in the city in full drag. We were celebrated at that point. No one really bothered us. No one really bothered us. I don't know what changed, but there was a change in the early 70s, or at least, I don't know, maybe we, like I said, we were just so isolated, insulated. We were just insulated from being scared. It didn't feel dangerous, and I don't think I really experienced that. I don't remember anyone saying they were ever beat up for coming home all bloody or anything like that. Only thing I could think of maybe is the case of Harlow and Jimmy Page. That was the groupies beating the girls up. I mean, the rock stars beating the girls up. He beat up Harlow. He beat up Harlow? One time, Harlow came home to the house after a Led Zeppelin concert. She told me that she'd been tied up, handcuffed to the bed, and left for the maids in the hotel room by Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin. She said he straddled her in the bed, put a fish between her legs, and left her. She already smelled like fish before that happened, so I really couldn't tell, but I believed her. It was wild stories like that that brought all the coquettes together. Many of us ran in the same circles. What? Tied up in the bed. She came back all stinky and dirty and oh my God, and loved it. She loved it. She loved it. Probably after he talked to her, she got something. She was notorious for fucking rock stars.
So one of our readers couldn't be here, so I'm gonna read their part, or just part of their part. I said, will you tell me the story now? And then Rumi says, if you give me a minute, I need some liquid. I got grape juice, I need to set the phone down for a minute. I'm not hanging up, I just need to set the phone down and grab my grape juice. Where do we start with the cum bread? Back to 1970 in the Coquette House, the second Coquette House. Hi.
That's where the light switch is.
Exciting.
Hibiscus would go around to various communes. He would also visit the other communes. They had 100 communes back then. They would deliver rotting vegetables. It was a free classic meal. There was a mechanic, there was just everything. So virtually everything was like free. Hibiscus and his group called themselves the Kitchen Slut Brigade, and they would go along to the various communes and offer to clean their kitchen. One of the things they would do while they were in people's kitchen was to make homemade bread, which was just a special thing that Hibiscus liked to do. Unbeknownst to the coquettes, I don't know about the other communes. The Coquettes would have these, at the time they were starting to be really serious, and they would have these board of directors meetings. It got serious. They elected a board of directors. Hibiscus and I were never ever on the board of directors. Did we want to be? It was all about bitch fighting and how much each other was worth after each show and how much money you received, so we didn't want any part of the board of directors. One time there was a big session. Well, you didn't do this, and you only get this, you did this, and you supplied this, so you get this, but we didn't want any part of it. Unbeknownst to the rest of the Coquettes, he basically baked the bread, and when he pulled it out of the oven, he would glaze the bread with his own semen.
Oh, God.
They'd announce things like, delicious, Hibiscus, please pass the marmalade. Hibiscus had served it to the board of directors meeting, to our manager Sebastian and the Coquettes while they were all just bitch fighting. And, delicious, could you pass the marmalade, pass the jelly? We would just laugh it up because they didn't know. And then I asked, did you ever try the bread because you were curious? And Rumi said, first, I've already swallowed his semen. No, I already did that. It would be because, yeah, I tried it. I'm like, dude, you're so nasty. No, I already had sex with him way back before I ever moved to the house when he was with my boyfriend. We even made the Tree movie in the summer of '69 before the Coquettes. Basically, whoever came to Land's End that day would play with me and be in the movie. Okay, that's that short story. And now we have Danny Batista. He does the Gay Tribal Elder newsletter with Don Kilhefner in Los Angeles. He's gonna read Rumi's favorite story to tell.
August. What did you think of Coquette Coraline Tether? Ruby. Coraline Tether had a boyfriend who was a straight guy, and he was actually in Luminous Procurus in one scene. But he never performed with the Coquettes. His name was Michael, somebody or other. His only claim, his only showing, was being in the film Luminous Procurus. He was Coraline's boyfriend, wearing a big Dior dress and sporting a gender-bending beard. Anyway, we were sitting around the Coquette commune, and we heard on the radio that a famous composer died. The Coquettes loved show tunes. A Broadway show tunes composer like George Gershwin had died. Oh my God, George Gershwin died, oh dear. I forgot who it was. And Coraline started fingering herself. And at the top of her lung, she screamed, oh my God, Michael's ring. She had earlier lost the ring he gave her and accused all of us, because we always stole from each other, of stealing her ring. She found it up her pussy and it turned green. It had turned green. She pulled it, it had been living up there for over a year, and it had been living up there for over a year, and it turned green. She screamed, oh my God, Michael's ring, his ring. She was so happy. And it had been up her cunt the whole time. Isn't that gross?
Which one?
The rusted one. Now we're gonna play a video interview I did with Rumi. It's my favorite story that he ever told me. It's not my favorite version, but it's my favorite story.
Okay.
I have no reason not to,
Oh, this isn't it.
and I.
Oh, wrong one?
Over and over.
Sorry. Let's see. They both just say my movie, so I can't tell.
So I was living with young Coquette Aaron at the time. We were not allowed to live in the Coquette house commune because we didn't have the SSI check, known back then as aid to the totally disabled. So we weren't allowed to live in the house. So we got our own little apartment, and we were at a meeting. I was at a meeting one night with Coquette Johnny, and after the meeting, we went back to our little new apartment. I just ended a week or so. And Johnny and I went back to my apartment, and I noticed people lurking in the bushes. A couple people in the bushes out front. This was at Cole and Belvedere in the Haight-Ashbury. I thought, that's strange, I didn't think much of it. Went inside my building, you had to go into an inner hall and a door that opened up into my kitchen. I went inside and woke up Aaron. He had a bag of weed, and the three of us were sitting around the kitchen table, smoking a joint, and there was a knock on the door. And I answered the door, and there was a girl at the door, and she was sweating like a big. She was sweating. She was saying, "Billy Morrow's outside. Billy Morrow's outside." Who's Billy Morrow? Who's Billy Morrow? Right? I don't know no Billy Morrow. She said, "Billy Morrow's outside." She said, "You got a back entrance to this place?" And I said, "Well, yeah. I have a back porch off my screen and patio back there." She said, Can I go out the back door?" And I said, "Do what you gotta do." So she ran through my house. She went the back door, back into the backyard, a flight down the stairs, and I went back to the table. I joined it. What the hell was that about? And then no sooner did I say that, she comes flying back in the back door. "Billy Morrow's outside, he's coming in." Oh my God, followed by 9 narcotics officers. And they were arresting her. The people we saw in the bushes were on patrol because they suspected junkies lived in the basement, and she was one of the junkies. So they chased her back into my house. We were at the table with the bag of weed. Aaron picked up the bag of weed to go hide it or something, take away, and the cop put the gun on the bag of weed. It's like, aha! Got her. And they went through all my costumes and headdresses and high heels, looking for more and more. That's all we had. There was no drugs in the house. They kicked in the back door, my back door, and they threw us in the basement with the junkies. Was it 9 junkies that were in the basement? And they took us all the way to Park Station. Again, now in Park Station in Golden Gate Park, they're gonna book us, and they need ID. "Where's your ID?" And Aaron was with me and Johnny. They were both minors, so they released Johnny to his mother. She came down and got him. They told her that her son was hanging out with notorious homosexuals. You think? And if Aaron was a minor from Sacramento, and I said, "Aaron, just lie. Just say you're 21. So they, what happened? Oh, they booked us there, and I was wearing at the time women's culottes. And the officer who was booking us just said, "Pardon me, but where's your ID?" I said, "Well, these are my wife's, and I had to put on my wife's culottes. I didn't have time to get dressed, goddammit." Oh, okay. So I booked myself under my false name again, and as did Aaron. So then we were transported to Bryant Street, to the main jail. And what happened then was, I had to do a cocktail show that night, actually. I had to be Mick Jagger at Les Ghouls that night, and later that night. And here we are in jail in the next morning, the night before the show, the morning before the show, overnight. At Bryant Street, at the jail, there was a line of men going in the big cell block after we had been processed and booked. And the sergeant came, told us to get to the end of the line. Oh, okay. So me and Aaron got to the end of the line. They put everyone else in with the general population. And then it got to us. The sergeant came up and said, "Pardon me, are you guys gay, homosexual?" And I hit Aaron up the head. I said, "What do you mean?" I said, "As soon as I get out of here, I'm gonna get me some pussy." In with the men. So they threw us in. They threw us in with the men. And the men the general population would start, they were like just jiving with me. They'd say, "What are you in for?" And I just give it back to them. They weren't bothering me. I kind of knew, I had street smart. They'd say, "What are you in for?" And I'd say, "Murder!" But then they'd ask Aaron, "What are you in for?" And he got all upset and crying and everything. And they were calling him Hot Lips Margaret. And they were saying, "When the lights go out tonight, we're gonna bust your butt." So he was all scared that we were gonna bust his butt. And I said, "Just give it back to us." So finally, the lights did go out. And then downstairs, we heard our name called, and Downstairs was my lawyer, downstairs was Michael Kalman, actually, the director of Elevator Girls in London, and Dr. Leons, who was a hippie doctor of the Coquette. And they bailed us out. And I remember running through the streets of San Francisco, just so psyched out that I was out first day. That time I just spent a day, I later did a week with something else. But that night I performed as Mick Jagger at the Halloween show at Ghouls.
Great, so I'm gonna go again. So Rumi mentioned the movie Elevator Girls in Bondage. That was his big film debut. But his voice wasn't in it. They forgot to record it with sound, so someone named Christine Condition did the voiceover. So I said, how did you find out your voice is being overdubbed in Elevator Girls in Bondage? And then Rumi said they came and they said, you're the only one who hasn't signed a release and we need you to sign a release. Oh no, we need to dub your voice. I said, dub my voice in a sound studio. I said, sound studio, dub my voice. Can I get my voice? You had cameras, sound cameras, 16mm cameras on the premises. All the 3 months, all last year shooting me, and there's no script. The script was in Michael Kalman's head, the director's head. There's no script to Elevator Girls. How am I to know what am I supposed to say? Dub my voice, you filmed me doing it. And he said, well, the soundtrack didn't come out, it didn't work, it didn't come out, and we need to dub your voice. I said, but there's no script. Well, I know. Michael said to George, I know what you said, I'll tell you what to say. Tell me what to say, dub my voice. Now that was the deal. I had already kind of gone into 330 Grove and started working on Pickup's Tricks, my next movie. Everyone in Elevator Girls was all strung out. The Elevator Girls on PCP Angel Dust. They were all fucked up on Angel Dust, everybody in Elevator Girls. Jeanette, Michael, the producer, the director, everybody. All those people were fucked up on Angel Dust. And then I say, didn't drugs finance the film? And then Rumi says, there was a fellow called Lawrence and he was running the whole operation from San Quentin. He was in prison and he was running the whole operation. They were, the director and the producer, both dead. Michael and Jim had the formula to Angel Dust to PCP. They used the laboratory from someone. They had the formula so they would cook it at a warehouse here in Oakland on Telegraph Avenue. The husband of Jeanette, he was an art teacher, a real art teacher at USF, U State, one of the universities in San Francisco. We used his loft in Oakland. They would be cooking Angel Dust there. When Clay and Rexy, because they were both minors, were on the premises filming, they were never ever allowed in that location when they were cooking the Angel Dust, never. They wouldn't have them even near there because it could blow up. In my job, besides being the star of Elevator Girls, I would have to stay up for 72 hours on the weekends or whenever they cooked it. It was done over the summer more than one time, a few times. My job was to stay up. I'd have to wash and sterilize everything in something called acetone and get it back to the chemist or the director and the producer of the film as quickly as possible and dry it in acetone. Then it would also be me and Jeanette who had to pose as art students with real actual chemical supply orders to chemical supply houses that supplied the universities with chemicals. So we got real orders from the husband, the art teacher, signed by him, legal art, and we had to go all over the Bay Area to secure the different chemicals that went into making of this drug. It was lots of stuff, bad stuff, ether, clorazepam, hesderin, magnesium shavings, all this shit, even metal chips. They cooked it down in the lab. They cooked it down in this bathtub in Oakland here on Telegraph Avenue. And then what would happen is Jeanette and I would have to pose as art students and go to various chemical supply houses all over the Bay Area, from Berkeley to Palo Alto, to get the chemicals. And not go to the same one for any number of chemicals because they weren't stupid. They were right in their cage. They were sitting in a cage off campus at the chemical supply houses. And if you asked for the street chemical, they would know. They had a sign right there saying what you were making was illegal. They weren't stupid. So we had to go to this chemical supply house for ether, go to this next one for magnesium chips, go to this next one until we had everything. And that was our job. So what happened was once we got the chemicals, Flores would cook it. I had to stay and clean the library, and finally, it would turn into a big solidified wheel, a solid wheel. The liquid would turn solid and it would become a big round wheel, at least round because it was made in a round tub in Oakland like a vat. So the wheel would be hard, and then someone would move the wheel, and then hippie gangsters, 4 of them who are in the movie, they're actually in the movie, 2 hippie gangsters would come over with the rifles, real guns, and suitcases full of cash. Suitcases full of cash, this is for real. They're in the movie too, these gangsters, but they'd bring over suitcases full of cash and pay off the filmmaker. And then Michael would pay me, and I was making good bucks for it. So that, not necessarily making the movie, but I'd walk away every time and make $750 in cash, which was big money in 1974, poor hippie drag queen, right? That was a lot of money. I mean, I could buy human hair wigs for everyone, for Clay or Rexy, and go to Fredworks of Hollywood and just splurge. It's a lot of money, so that's what we did, and the man who was running the whole operation was actually running it from prison. Can you imagine? So it was kind of scary, definitely. So anyway, that's the story there. I had a fight with them. I went to live at 330 Grove and I said, fuck these angel dust hicks. I'm gonna work on my new film that's gonna be a bigger experience, a better experience than Elevator Girls was. My nose was in the air. I was still pretty much high on coke, that was my drug. We did angel dance once by mistake. It was a bit, I didn't like it at all. It's called animal elephant tranquilizer, they used to call it. The elephant tranquil, it was just terrible. They said when you're on it, you can imagine anything you want in front of you. A pot of gold, a mint coat, whatever you want. But if you go to touch it, it'll just dissolve. It's not there, but you can conjure up anything. Hibiscus was already living at 330 Grove, so I moved in there in a little room, and I covered the room, the wall, the ceiling, the floor with pictures of boys. Then I was gonna become a big star along with Hibiscus. We were set to be in Pickup's Tricks. Gregory Pickup started filming me. I'd have my own scenes. I had a tableau. But it was all edited out due to some of the suggestive and provocative things I ended up doing on film. So next we have Mike Payne, who has been listening to me talk about Rumi for years and helped with tonight as well. And after Rumi left San Francisco, he came to New York, and then he wanted to leave New York, and that's where we're gonna start.
Raise this up a little bit. Just scoop it.
Yeah.
When I was in upstate New York, I met a girl from Syracuse University named Cheryl. She and 2 of her student friends were going to drive a car across America. I agreed to go with her, but I'd never been behind the wheel. I never learned to drive. My dad and brother were auto body mechanics, and I certainly did not want to have the same skills as them. I told Cheryl, I can pay for gas, but I can't do any of the driving. We all got in the car and started heading west. I hadn't met these girls until that morning, except for Cheryl. One girl had the whole itinerary planned out. She had relatives across the entire country to stay with. It was terrible from the very first day. We'd stop to see all of our relatives, and they would want to make us dinner, keep us overnight, bring us to the mall, bring us to church. After 3 days of visiting these relatives, we arrived in Ohio or somewhere like that. Then the other girl we were with, she didn't want to go to the south because she was prejudiced. So we went through the north instead, but it was December. It was brutal weather. They were fighting amongst themselves over the itinerary, and they would just keep driving and driving. Finally, I said, let's pull over and get a hotel for the night. For Christ's sake, we've been in this car for 3 days. The one girl said, my daddy wouldn't like it if I shared a hotel room with a man. We just kept going. They were screaming at each other. I didn't know where we were. We stopped at a truck stop in the middle of the night. I said to Cheryl, you know what? Get my things. Get my things. I've got to get out of here. I've got to get out of this situation. I've got to leave. I had a little money, and I knew if I could find out where I was, I could take the bus back to California. She told the other girls and they hated me. They threw my luggage out of the car and sped off. As soon as they left, I felt a sense of relief. A whole weight was lifted off of me. I entered the Truck Stops Cafe Diner, had a cup of coffee and a piece of pie, and asked the waitress, "So, where am I? What's the biggest city close to here?" She said, "Oklahoma City." Off to Oklahoma City I went. I saw a couple and waited until they were getting up to pay the bill. I asked, "Pardon me, are you going to Oklahoma City?" They said, "Oh, we just came from that direction." "Oh, okay." I had another piece of pie and some more coffee. It was 2 hours later when I saw another couple. I asked them, "Pardon me, are you going to Oklahoma City?" They said, "Honey, we're going to Dallas, past Oklahoma City." I said, "Dallas? I'll take it." Okay, and I got in their car. They were ballroom dancers attending a competition in Dallas. They were nice folks. They dropped me off in downtown Dallas. I looked up and what did I see? The Texas School Book Depository building where Oswald shot Kennedy. It was right beneath it. I was like, oh my God, what am I doing in Dallas? I was still a New Yorker. I called all my friends in New York and I asked, what am I doing? What am I doing in Dallas? Where should I go? They said, go to Austin. I said, okay. I stuck out my thumb again and went to Austin. It was cool. It was a college town. There were young people. I remember there was live music and all the clubs and bars, which was nice. But I was still thinking, what am I gonna do? I didn't know anybody there. I stuck my thumb out again and this young hippie cowboy picked me up. He said, where are you going? Like in She Freaks, the movie that forever changed my life. I said, anywhere, just get me out of here. He said, I'm going to Houston. We arrived, we started talking, and he asked me if I'd like to go to a job site with him in Houston. His job was with a crew of Texans to shampoo the carpets at the gated community of empty condos that some millionaire had bought. No one had lived there yet. Yet we shampooed the carpet in every unit. I stayed with him in Houston for 2 weeks. I was sequestered there in this gated community, living with a whole pack of boys and hippie cowboys. Finally, on New Year's Eve, a boy named Kenny said, I heard we're gonna stay the night and go to this dude ranch with us. I said, dude ranch? What the hell am I doing in Texas, going to a dude ranch? I'm trying to get to California. I said, you know what, Kenny? I want you to drive me to the edge of town on New Year's Eve. So he did. I told him goodbye and I couldn't do the dude ranch. Yet again, I stuck my thumb out and some Latino farmers picked me up. They were going to New Orleans. I remember that Cheryl's brother lived in New Orleans. I also knew a friend from Brooklyn whose father did black exploitation films and reissued Billie Holiday records. His name was Richard. He produced the movie Superfly. He was in New Orleans making an all-black version of the opera La Boheme with Al Green, Curtis Mayfield, and Melba Moore, and told me if I wanted to work in productions behind the scenes, I should come to New Orleans. I arrived in New Orleans. First, I scoped out Cheryl's brother, who was living in the suburbs. He wasn't there. Then I went to the French Quarter. I rang the doorbell of my friend's dad, his landlady, entered the courtyard and said, hello. I introduced myself and said, I'm here to see Richard. I've come from New York. She said, oh, my dear, Richard's in New York for Christmas. I said, oh no. He invited me. Now what am I gonna do? It's New Year's Eve. Southern hospitality saved the day. She said, I'll tell you what you do. Go down to Bourbon Street tonight at 6 o'clock and ask for Alan Jaffe. What did I have to lose? Nothing.
Now we're gonna do another Rumi video about him leaving New Orleans.
Whoops. Is it this one?
So I was living with young coquette Erin at the
That's the other
time.
one.
God damn it. I can't tell which, oh, okay.
I think it's that one.
Okay. Oops.
For those who, I have no reason not to, and I told the story over and over again for those who might not believe it. This is on my way out of New Orleans, actually. After New Orleans, in New Orleans, let me set that up. I supported myself as a thief, actually. I worked with a fence in New Orleans to make money. And we actually specialized in hood ornaments, if you can imagine, stealing hood ornaments, and men's wing top shoes and men's tweed trousers, 40s and 30s trousers. We actually had a buyer for them, and that's how we supported ourselves. Finally, I did 4 months in New Orleans. So it's taken me 4 months to get across the country. And finally, I decided in New Orleans, because the weather got so warm and late, I was there from New Year's Eve until late May, and it got so hot. I don't do well at hot, I do better at cold. I've done the Catskills and the snow in Canada, so I do better in the cold, but it got so warm for me, I had to flee. So I hitchhiked out of New Orleans after 4 months, and my first ride, I stuck out my thumb, and I got into a big, shiny Cadillac with tail pins, the whole works, a vintage Cadillac, with this big guy, overweight guy with big old locks, big old rings all over his fingers. We started chatting, and he said, yeah, I'm on way to a Baton Rouge concert. I'm on my way to a Led Zeppelin concert in Baton Rouge. I said, okay, drop me in Baton Rouge. So I'm riding with him, he said, yeah, I just wrote this book. And I said, yeah? He said, yeah, there's a whole box of them in the back, help yourself. So I picked up the book, and I looked at it, and it said something about, I forget the title, do you remember, Gus? It was something about the Bank of
I think it's the Bank of Louisiana.
The Bank of Louisiana, and it's written by Jim Morrison. And now, Jim Morrison had been dead for 4 years, and I realized our alleged death, I had read about his alleged death. I realized I'm in the car with Jim Morrison, and we're talking groupies we knew in common in LA, and the whole scene, it's like, oh my God, but I don't let on like I know it's Jim Morrison, I'm like, just playing, I know how to act like a celebrity, so I'm not really, oh God, oh, okay, well, I'm just like, oh, okay, sure, yeah, I know Miss Lucy and Miss, and we're like confirming all this, and he didn't say nothing about staging his death, nothing. It was like, he was just there in the car, and he did gain weight. I worked with Jim Morrison with a living theater in 1968 or 9. We did a show called Paradise Now in San Francisco, and it was a loose show that anyone could be in. Both me and Jim Morrison were in that show, and he looks exactly like he did there. He gained a lot of weight. So I believe he allegedly staged his own death. I don't believe he's in Père Lachaise. I don't know the whole story, but I do believe that he picked me up hitchhiking and gave me a ride to Baton Rouge. Now, that was also the third straw of kind of my New Orleans experience being associated with death. It was kind of spooky there in New Orleans. I had a bicycle, I met a girl, I was hanging out with her, going dancing and stuff. I met her in a coffee house up by Tulane, and we were having a good old time. I was staying in her house in the Garden District, and then in the middle of the night, they got a call, one of her friends, and they were all from Mississippi, the house, and all the girls went back for the funeral and blah, blah, blah. Next thing I know, I called to see if she was home, and the boy, the roommate said no, that the girl I had been seeing, Victoria, had gone off the same cliff as the one they had the funeral for. It was like a double suicide or something, so scary. And then I had a friend, Jimmy Nolan told me of this artist to go see in New Orleans, and I never did, but the last couple of days, I needed to get rid of my bicycle. And I said, I wanted to go see this artist, John Camus. Then I went to visit him, so nice. I stayed, he told me stories all night, wrinkled me stories, and he had 2 house guests, a woman called Dorothy and her young gay son called Pogo. And they were telling me about life and living in the French Quarter all their lives. It was so fascinating. And then they put us all to bed. He let us sleep in his loft, his artist loft, John, the artist. And then the next morning I went out, I had to bring my bike back or something. When I got back, I said, well, where's Dorothy after she just told me the story of her life? He said, well, she went into Charity Hospital and died. Oh, Ricky. So I got out of New Orleans, right? That's still hell, but I don't want to say it. So,
Perfect, so we have 2 more readers. Next, we have Joe Jeffries, who Rumi only called his videographer. I didn't know his real name for like years. And he's gonna read a story. Rumi would remember stories and he'd be so excited to tell me. And this is one of the stories that he was very excited to tell me about.
Hello. Yeah, I love this story. When I read this story in here, it was like the first time I read that Jim Morrison story. I was like, yeah. This is the one I want to read. So, do you remember Mexican jumping beans?
Yes.
Got it. Got your line. They're outlawed in this country now, but you used to be able to get them in the country, or if you went to Mexico, you could bring them back. Now, apparently, they were little beans and they had worms in them, and the worms would activate to heat. There was a place in LA growing up, a little Mexican village we go to on field trips in elementary schools, and it was called Oliveria Street. And it was a little section of downtown LA of Mexican stalls and restaurants and little Mexican shops, all Mexican. There you could buy Mexican jumping beans as a kid. We would get the Mexican jumping beans and we would put them in our underwear. The warmth of our crotch would set them off. And we would wear them to church during the sermon. Because the sermon was so boring. And we would put the beans in our underwear and they would go off with the warmth of our pants and start moving around and tickle. No, we didn't tell anybody we were doing it. It's just me and my friend would do that. My friend and the Cub Scout, the Boy Scout. We would do this. I thought it was just funny. This little thing about the Mexican jumping beans. I remember on another trip, this was in elementary school. I went to the first elementary school in the valley at LA, and it was eventually condemned or something. In the 6th grade, my final year in the elementary school, they built a new one closer to my house at the Bassett Street. My sisters went before they moved to Idaho. At this elementary school, one time my class went to Olivia Street for a field trip. We had a big, heavy Mexican lunch and bought souvenirs and brought them back and set them on the desk and invited the classroom next door to share our gifts. I just put them on the desk so they could walk around and look at all our little cute gifts. They weren't allowed to touch, but they could browse. We all lined up against the window as your class filed by in to look at our gifts. And there was a boy named David Schwartz. I'll never forget his name. Apparently, the Mexican lunch didn't agree with him. We were standing there with open windows. I remember it was like a summer day, but I think I had a sweater on. I don't know why, but it was a summer day. We were standing there with the windows open and David Schwartz started to vomit, to puke. He turned next to me thinking it was going to reach the window, missed, and puked all over me. Thank you.
And we have our last reader. Thanks everyone for coming. Will Shellhorn. He has over 5.5 million likes on TikTok. So
In 2004, I lived in the Castro. I was still off the grid. I took over someone else's lease, so I didn't need identification. There was an incident at that apartment. I didn't have money to pay my rent. I eventually had to get on welfare. My friends Carl and Larry, who are now landlords, staged an intervention and convinced me that I needed formal assistance. I had never considered getting an ID, but you needed one to get public assistance. It took another couple of years before I got everything together. I had never even had a bank account in my name. We opened a bank account and found my original social security number stating I hadn't worked since I was 19. I went to the government agency and they said, "Where were you all of these years?" "We don't have any record of you working since 1967. I said, "People took care of me because of who they thought I was, but they're all gone now. And can we leave the door open, please?" I got it, stamp, stamp, that was enough. Another doctor said, "I see you want to hurt yourself or others." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "You're mentally disabled." I said, "News to me. I denied it to the hilt and said, no, of course I don't want to hurt myself or others. I've never been like that. I've never been depressed or bored. I don't get bored. I have many young followers in England who tell me that they are bored, that they are so terribly bored. I always tell them to draw a picture, paint a painting, write a story, write a poem, or just do something. I'm never bored and don't want to be depressed or hurt myself because I never know what's around the corner tomorrow and all the exciting opportunities that will present themselves. I also think it's because I'm always in love. Whether with someone, consummated or not, or with something, I am just always in love.
Do you want to say anything about the dreams?
Yeah, so we have stuff, well, thank you to Greg and Donnie and Lou for making this possible. We have stuff from Rumi's archive. I brought some stuff too, it's over there. Coquette posters, his shoes from Pearls Over Shanghai, some flyers and ephemera. So thanks everyone.
And books for
coming.
sale.
And books for sale too.
And August will sign books.